They whisper some moments in life can destroy a man. But this wasn't only a moment, it was the collapse of everything Bill Cosby believed he could command. The courtroom was stifling, the air dense enough to suffocate on. Cameras snapped. Breaths shook. And then the judge's tone sliced through like a dagger. Life in prison, without the hope of parole. For a second. The room halted. Even the air seemed to hesitate. Cosby tried to steady himself, but his body deceived him. His lips trembled. His chest lifted in frantic gulps, and the blood vanished from his face. Then, as if the weight of his guilt crushed him all at once, he crumbled. The thud reverberated. Gasps burst. Security and attorneys surged forward. Some murmured, "Is he finished?" Others stared, unwilling to accept what they'd just witnessed. Outside, demonstrators caught wind of the story. Some roared, calling it justice at last. Others whispered grimly, "This is the start of the downfall." But then arrived the true shock. Murmurs from within the prosecution team that his collapse wasn't only from the sentence. Hidden files had been spoken of in court seconds earlier, files rumored to contain identities of other Hollywood titans, and a secret tape of Cosby admitting to realities that could destroy careers, families, and legacies forever. Across the aisle, Pamela Warner, mother of Malcolm Jamal Warner, sat silent, tears flowing, her voice quaking as she breathed, "This is only the beginning." Outside, Shark sex loaded. Shark Cosby fall, Shark truth saf, Shark Hollywood exposed. Millions replayed the footage endlessly, their hearts racing, because deep down everyone sensed the verdict was not the finale. It was the first fracture before the real quake. The day started like any other in the bustling downtown courthouse, but it ended as one of the most shocking, devastating spectacles in recent courtroom memory. Journalists had been stationed since sunrise, their cameras fixed on the heavy oak. Doors as if waiting for a phantom to appear. Protesters crowded the streets outside, their signs blazing words like justice, honesty, and never again. Some had been waiting decades for this instant. Others had come merely to witness history rip itself apart. Inside, the pressure felt like static lightning, sharp, humming, perilous. Every seat in the gallery was occupied. The smell of aged wood, bitter coffee, and human dread clung to the atmosphere. Bill Cosby sat at the defense table, his suit crisply pressed, his hands folded gently in front of him, but his eyes revealed another tale. There was a flicker, a man gripping the last strands of delusion, knowing deep inside that the cord was about to break. The judge appeared and the energy shifted abruptly. Conversations ended mid-thought. Even the rustle of papers froze. All you could catch was the slow, heavy sound of the judge's steps, each one reverberating like a countdown to something permanent. Then it arrived. Life in prison without the chance of parole. The words carved through the air. They didn't just land, they exploded. A gasp rippled through the courtroom like a tide. One juror instinctively raised their hand to their mouth. A reporter's pen slid from their grip, striking the floor with a faint clatter. Somewhere in the back row, someone muttered, "Oh my God." Cosby's head snapped slightly as if the weight of the sentence had hit him bodily. His lips shifted, but no sound emerged. He blinked quickly, his eyes clouding over. Then his shoulders started to quake. The attorney beside him leaned in, whispering desperately, but it was too late. The barrier had shattered. The color drained from his face until it resembled carved stone. His breathing grew shallow, frantic. One hand reached instinctively for the desk, the other clutching at his heart. And then, with a dreadful final slump, his body gave in. He struck the floor hard. The sound carried, a dull, fatal thud that made even the toughest court officers shudder. Bedlam erupted. "Call 911!" someone cried, though the medics were already charging forward. Attorneys, guards, and court staff swarmed around him. A camera flash burst, seizing the image of America's once revered TV father sprawled unconscious on the ground. His suit rumpled, his mouth slightly parted. That single image would flood every media outlet within the hour. Outside, the crowd sensed something had occurred. Shouts rippled through the avenue. Protesters who had been chanting slogans halted, their faces turning toward the courthouse steps. A man in the front yelled, "He's down!" He collapsed. Instantly, the noise split, half cheering in what they called justice served, the other half whispering as if uneasy about the sight of an elderly man's last dignity stripped away in public. But what the public didn't yet realize would make this day erupt far beyond a courtroom drama was that Cosby's collapse hadn't come from the sentence alone. Just moments before the verdict, the prosecution had hinted at a set of sealed files that, according to insiders, contained far more than anyone had imagined. Not just additional victim accounts, but identities, names of other Hollywood legends, and most damning, a secret audio recording allegedly of Cosby himself, speaking openly about things so explosive, so destructive, that releasing them could end multiple careers, ruin families, and rewrite the public's view of Hollywood's darkest secrets. The timing was deliberate. Prosecutors had allowed those murmurs to surface right before the sentencing, and some believed the shock of realizing those files might one day be revealed is what finally shattered Cosby's composure. In the gallery, Pamela Warner, the mother of Malcolm Jamal Warner, sat frozen. Her son had once been a child actor on Cosby's famous sitcom, the one that had sold America an image of perfect family life. Now she stared at the man who had helped shape that illusion, lying crumpled on the floor. Her tears were not the kind that fell softly. They burned hot with years of quiet fury. She leaned forward slightly, her voice barely audible, but sharp, enough to cut through the noise in her own mind. This is the beginning, not the end. Outside, news outlets scrambled to send breaking alerts. The hashtags Cosby collapse, Tars Truth Runs Faster, and Hollywood Secrets were already trending. Clip after clip of his fall began circulating online, slowed down, replayed, dissected. Millions watched, their jaws tight, their stomachs twisting, some out of sympathy, others out of vindication. And yet, behind all the headlines, the true story was still locked away, waiting for its moment to strike. Because the verdict may have ended Cosby's freedom, but it had just opened the door to a far larger storm. The courthouse hallways had never felt so stifling. Paramedics wheeled Bill Cosby out on a stretcher, his head tilted slightly to the side, an oxygen mask covering most of his face. Flashbulbs from the waiting media erupted like fireworks, each one capturing a different angle of his defeat. Some reporters shouted questions. "Mr. Cosby, do you have anything to say?" But he didn't answer. Whether it was unconsciousness or a refusal to speak, no one could tell. Inside the courtroom, the air still carried the tension of shock. Some jurors sat motionless in their seats, staring at the now vacant defense table. The prosecution's lead attorney shuffled papers with quivering hands, clearly aware that this was no longer just a legal victory. It was the beginning of something far bigger. It didn't take long for the whispers to swell into roars. By the time Cosby's stretcher reached the waiting ambulance, social media was already ignited. A single tweet from a so-called court insider struck the spark. Breaking collapse not just from verdict. Prosecution hinted at sealed files linking other major Hollywood names to same crimes. Audio confession exists. Developing. Within minutes, the post had been shared over 50,000 times. Every major outlet scrambled to confirm the claim, but the damage or the justice, depending on who you asked, was already done. Cable news switched to wall-to-wall coverage. The footage of Cosby collapsing to the ground played on a loop, each network adding their own dramatic music and slow-motion replay. The collapse became more than a medical emergency. It was now a symbol. Some framed it as the moment a predator's facade finally crumbled. Others said it was the instant Hollywood's darkest secrets began to unravel. Behind closed doors, though, the mood was far grimmer. Sources inside the district attorney's office revealed that the sealed evidence included transcripts of a private conversation recorded years ago, one in which Cosby allegedly laughed while recounting incidents that had never reached the public. Even more explosive, he mentioned names. Names of other actors, producers, and media executives, some still at the peak of their careers. People the public trusted. People who built their reputations on moral authority. The mere hint of those names sent a chill through the entertainment industry. Publicists began contacting crisis managers. Lawyers for various celebrities reached out quietly to see if their clients were implicated. It was a scramble not seen since the height of the Me Too revelations. Only this time, the insiders said it would be worse. Meanwhile, outside the courthouse, the crowd had transformed into a tempest. Supporters of Cosby shouted that the trial was a witch hunt, clashing with survivors' rights activists who saw the collapse as poetic justice. The chants grew louder, fiercer, until the police had to set up barricades. Pamela Warner remained inside, refusing to join the media frenzy. She sat alone in the front row, her hands clasped tightly together, her eyes fixed on the empty defense table. For her, this wasn't about hashtags or headlines. It was intimate. Her son, Malcolm Jamal Warner, had grown up in Cosby's shadow, unknowingly part of a carefully constructed illusion. Watching that illusion crumble in real time was both vindicating and heartbreaking. When a reporter finally approached her in the hallway, she didn't give a long statement. She simply looked into the camera and said, "The truth always finds its way out. Always." Those words went viral within hours, spliced into every news package, shared across every social platform. For many viewers, it felt like the first crack in Hollywood's iron wall of silence. But then came the leak. Late that night, a short, grainy audio clip surfaced online. The voice, unmistakably Cosby's, was calm, almost casual. The content, however, was chilling. He spoke of making sure certain people stayed silent and mentioned a list of others who wouldn't survive the truth coming out. The clip was only 30 seconds long, but it was enough to ignite the internet. Suddenly, it wasn't just about Bill Cosby anymore. It was about the list. Who was on it? How high did it reach? Entertainment blogs began speculating wildly, dropping hints without naming names. Some users claimed they could recognize one or two of the voices in the background of the clip. Others insisted it was a deep fake, but the DA's office neither confirmed nor denied its authenticity. That silence only fueled the frenzy. Hollywood went into panic mode. PR teams sent out vague, no-comment statements. A few high-profile actors suddenly announced social media breaks. One major studio quietly postponed the release of a film starring an actor rumored to be tied to the case. The public didn't need confirmation. They could sense fear. And through it all, the image of Cosby's collapse played on loop. Not as a moment of weakness, but as the possible tipping point of an industry-wide reckoning. By the next morning, the hashtags had evolved. Who is on the list joined Archer Cosby collapse and Chalk Hollywood secrets at the top of trending charts. Live streams popped up with expert panels dissecting every second of the trial, every syllable of the leaked audio. But while the world speculated, the DA's office moved quietly. Warrants were being prepared, subpoenas drafted. The sealed files for now remained locked away, but sources claimed the court could be petitioned to unseal them if public interest demanded it. And public interest had never been louder. For the survivors who had waited decades for justice, it was a bittersweet moment. They had their verdict. They had seen Cosby crumble. But the possibility that more predators could be hiding in plain sight kept their wounds raw. And for Pamela Warner, the fight was far from over. She left the courthouse without fanfare, slipping into the back seat of a waiting car. Her phone buzzed with messages from other Hollywood parents, some of whom were suddenly questioning what their children had been exposed to during their careers. In the rearview mirror, she caught one last glimpse of the courthouse now swarmed. With cameras, flashing lights, and shouting voices, it wasn't just a building anymore. It was ground zero for whatever was coming next. Because if the whispers were true, Bill Cosby's collapse was only the first domino. The real storm hadn't even begun. By the third day after the collapse, the world was no longer just watching Bill Cosby. It was watching Hollywood unravel. The list had surfaced. It wasn't officially released by the court, but an anonymous account on the dark web posted a heavily redacted document claimed to be from the sealed files. Even with names blurred, the context was enough for internet sleuths to fill in the blanks. Within hours, certain initials and vague descriptions started matching high-profile actors, beloved talk show hosts, and even one sitting studio executive. And then came the second audio leak, longer, clearer, more devastating. This time, Cosby's voice was deliberate, almost boastful. He spoke of decades of protection, of pulling strings in the press, and of friends in powerful places who kept their hands clean while mine got dirty. He laughed when recalling how certain stories were buried, how victims were pressured into silence. The worst part wasn't the words themselves. It was the casual tone, the way he spoke about human lives as if they were disposable storylines in a script he controlled. The reaction was nuclear. Talk shows devoted entire hours to the leaks, inviting psychologists, former prosecutors, and industry insiders to dissect every detail. Social media became a digital battlefield with users demanding resignations, arrests, and public apologies from anyone even remotely connected. Hashtags multiplied. Jar Cosby files, Jar Hollywood fallout, no one is safe. Outside the DA's office, survivors gathered in growing numbers, holding candles and photographs. Their silence was louder than any protest chant, a living reminder that behind every headline was a human being who had been silenced for too long. Pamela Warner was there too. She didn't carry a sign. She didn't speak to reporters. She simply stood at the front of the line, a steady presence, her face lit by the flickering glow. For her, this wasn't about internet outrage. It was about finally seeing cracks in a fortress that had seemed indestructible. Meanwhile, inside Hollywood, panic turned into paranoia. Studios rushed to review old agreements. Long-buried NDAs were quietly bought out in hopes of avoiding revelation. A major streaming service abruptly removed several classic shows from its library, including Cosby's own, citing licensing issues, but fooling no one. Then came the arrests. In a shocking late-night raid, federal agents escorted a well-known producer from his Beverly Hills mansion in handcuffs. The footage captured from a neighbor's phone went viral instantly. Rumors circulated that his name appeared prominently in the unredacted version of the list. By morning, 2 more arrests followed, both industry veterans whose careers spanned decades. It felt less like a news cycle and more like a purge. The public's hunger for truth became insatiable. Viewers who once laughed at these celebrities, jokes, or admired their work were now digging into their past interviews, searching for clues they might have overlooked. Old award show clips were re-uploaded with users highlighting awkward moments and cryptic jokes that now seemed sinister in hindsight. And still, Cosby remained at the center of it all, a fallen king whose own downfall had triggered an empire-wide collapse. From his hospital bed, sources claimed he had refused visitors except for his attorney. One nurse reportedly overheard him muttering, "They think I'm the end, but I'm just the start." Whether it was a warning or a delusion, no one could say. Pamela's quiet resolve soon turned into action. Alongside other families, she began collaborating with advocacy groups to demand that the court unseal the files entirely. The pressure campaign gained momentum rapidly, with petitions gathering millions of signatures worldwide. If they've protected each other for decades, Pamela told a rally, then it's time we protect the truth. The rally footage hit primetime news. Her words became a rallying cry, printed on signs, chanted at protests, and shared in countless TikTok edits alongside clips of the collapse. The emotional contrast, Cosby's lifeless slump on the courtroom floor against Pamela's fierce, tear-streaked face, became the visual language of a movement. But with the pressure came danger. Anonymous threats started arriving in activists' inboxes. Pamela's own car was vandalized one night. A single word scratched into the paint: stop. Instead of silencing her, it fueled her further. "They're scared," she told a reporter, "and scared people make mistakes." And mistakes did happen. An entertainment lawyer accidentally leaked an internal email thread in which several studio executives discussed containing the situation and making examples of those already exposed to protect the rest. The email was meant to be private. It wasn't. Within hours, it was front-page news, confirming every suspicion the public harbored about a coordinated cover-up. Now, the outrage was total. Lawmakers began calling for congressional hearings. Sponsors pulled out of multi-million-dollar contracts. Charity organizations cut ties with celebrities whose names had even a whisper of connection to the files. The Cosby collapse had evolved into a cultural earthquake, one that shook not only Hollywood but every industry linked to it. And yet, through all of this, one truth remained. The full list was still sealed. The final blow came unexpectedly. In a leaked recording from inside a closed-door court session, a judge could be heard saying, "Once the motion passes, everything becomes public record. We can't protect them forever." The audio was grainy, but it was enough to send shockwaves through the entertainment world. The clock was now ticking. In living rooms across the country, families sat glued to their screens, waiting for the next name to surface. Every live press conference felt like it could be the one that ended someone's career in real time. And as the anticipation built, one truth echoed louder than any headline, louder than any hashtag. Bill Cosby's collapse had been the spark, but the fire was consuming far more than anyone had imagined. For some, it was justice long overdue. For others, it was the death of the dream they had been promised for decades. But for everyone, it was proof of one thing. In the end, no secret stays buried forever. So now you've seen it. The collapse, the stretcher, the whispers of a list that could burn an entire industry to the ground. And if you're feeling that knot in your stomach right now, that mix of shock, sadness, and anger, you're not alone. Millions around the world are watching this story unfold in real time. And the truth is, we're only scratching the surface. Bill Cosby's sentencing wasn't the end of a single man's saga. It was the opening chapter of a reckoning decades in the making. Every name in those sealed files represents another victim silenced, another truth hidden, another life altered forever. And now the world has a choice. Turn away and let the machine keep running, or demand that every secret be dragged into the light. The question is, will you be one of the people who helps keep the pressure on? Will you be one of the voices?